Good afternoon, everyone. Happy end of Memorial Day weekend. I hope you had a restful, long weekend wherever you ended up being and spending that time. We're back. This is our May edition. This is our fifth webinar, believe it or not, of Emmett's Place Education. And the guests just keep getting better and better. And we're so excited to have Chad here today. I think Chad, of anyone, needs the least introduction because, he's the ultimate internet jazz man. I feel like everyone knows him. But Chad's played with a lot of the greats. If you've been watching live from Emmett's Place, he was getting better and better, and we're so excited to have. He was here many editions ago, maybe 20 editions ago. I can't believe it's been that long, but he was there then. He has 250,000 followers across his social media platforms. He's played with everyone from Chris Bodie to Taylor Swift. And I don't really think I need to say much more. I think a lot of us checked him out online, and his music speaks for itself. So, Chad, we're so happy to have you here today. How are you doing?
Man, thank you, Brian. Great to be here. Emmet, thanks for having me. Yeah, let's get into it.
Platforms he's played with. Sweet. Sorry, I was figuring out some tech stuff.
Oh yeah, no worries. That's how it goes.
All right, we got some attendees streaming in here. Just a reminder, because it's been a few weeks. This is all a Q&A format. We'll go for about 75 minutes or so. If you're on the Zoom, if you're watching on the Zoom currently, I'm sure many of you have been here before, but there's a Q&A tab at the bottom. And if you click on that, you'll be able to enter questions that you want to ask Chad. And those are where I'll be checking those out. If you're on Facebook or YouTube and you're watching, we might check it periodically, but we're mostly checking out the questions in the chat here on Q&A. So go ahead and drop some of those questions in there. We got some trickling in now. While I wait for those, we just want to say thank you again to Adam R. Rose. He's the one who's sponsored all of this and made it possible for us to do these for free. And if you are on the Facebook or YouTube and this is your first time, make sure you head over to emmetsplace.com or emmettcohen.com/education and sign up, and then you can join the Zoom for free and get in here and maybe ask Chad a question face to face.
Cool. I'm gonna jump in first just to say hello to everybody. Chad, Thank you so much for coming on here. For those of you who don't know, I just saw Chad on Friday at Benny Benack III's recording session in New York City. We got a chance to play together, and I was reminded then and also at the house just how much history we have. And I remember meeting you in 2008 at the Grammy band, Grammy in the Schools, when we were in high school. We were pretty young, and to kind of like look back and say, wow, I've known you for almost 14 years, almost 15 years now. I was wondering if you could take us just on the journey of your last decade and a half or so, where you've been kind of artistically, business wise, other places in the world, and what you found meaning in, some stuff like that. Just where you're at generally, Chad.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's surreal how long it's been at this point, right? I remember when it was like, yeah, we met like 3 years ago. Good to see you. But yeah, anyway, so ever since Grammy Band, I went to the Brubeck Institute, which was a really cool program that ran for about 15, 20 years, I think. A lot of really great musicians went to it. The inaugural program had some really great musicians like Joe Sanders and Justin Brown and Fabian Almazan. And then for 15 or 20 years, I think after that, the program ran. It was pretty much just a 5-person program. We were just like a quintet. And, we played a fair amount, and guest artists would come out, and we got to work with all sorts of people. And we worked a lot with the artistic director, Joe Gilman. And it was amazing, studying with a pianist. I got to learn a lot from Joe. business wise, I guess from there. So, I moved to New York after that. A lot of people don't realize I'm a college dropout. I went to new school for a year, and just found that, school and institutionalized education wasn't a good fit for me anymore. And, I was starting to work in New York. I remember, I guess it was about 10 years ago or something like that. I remember I played like 37 gigs in 30 days or something like that. I was playing more than a gig a day, which, for a sax player, is a pretty fair amount. I was working, and so that was cool. And I felt like, I didn't need to be in school anymore because I was doing what I came to New York to do. I was learning so much just from, being on the scene and playing with people every night. From there, things developed and played and toured with all sorts of people. Clarence Penn and Arturo Farrell were a couple of the people that I first started touring with. Touring with Clarence was really awesome and surreal because he, played with Brecker so much at the end of his life, at the end of Brecker's life. It was really surreal getting to play with Clarence, and he's played with so many of my favorite saxophonists like Chris Potter and Mark Turner, and toured with Clarence and Arturo Farrell, and started touring with Taylor Swift, and after that, it was a lot of fun, and I kind of wanted to just develop my own thing after that. So started just posting videos of me playing online, from there things developed and my solo career started to take off, and I started touring with Chris Bodie, which has been really great. I do about half of his shows. I split that gig with amazing saxophonist Andy Snitzer, and that's really great, because I get featured as a soloist, and he's really kind with taking his band and letting them do their thing. We have just such a blast, playing those shows. It's a really, really awesome program. The shows, I've told him before, I think it's just like, there's no show better than the Chris Bodie show. It's like, it's a whole thing, you got to see it if you haven't seen it already. So that's been a blast. And I do that and I do my own thing. And I guess that's the past 10 years in a nutshell.
Wow. That's amazing to hear that. I mean, it's so interesting that you play so many different groups and they're all playing such different types of music. Mm-hmm. And you're clearly very busy, which kind of leads me to this first question from Shane. And this seems to get asked of each one of our guests, and I think for good reason. You seem to have such a busy schedule. When do you have time to practice, and what does your practice routine look like? And I'm sure it's changed over the years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it always, they say when it rains, it pours. I was pretty much on the road for like 9 months straight, until recently. And now I'm, in this month or two, I was telling them the other day, that's, a little more chill. And so when, things slow down for a second, you try to take advantage of that and set some days aside and just shed. So that's what that's what I'm kind of trying to do now. Well, I have a little more time over these next few weeks, and then, kind of getting back into it. But all to say, when I'm practicing, I'm very structured, but I'm also very open at the same time. So I always do 20-minute increments. I barely ever practice something for more than 20 minutes at a time. I might still practice something for, hours in a week, but I find I always stay fresh if I just sink my teeth into it for about 20 minutes, then I move on to the next thing. And I've done that for a long time. That helps me stay focused, especially in this time when I think we're all feeling like we have heightened ADD with, how fast paced the world is, and social media and everything like that. And everything's just like bang, bang, bang. So, by just telling myself that I'm just going to do this for 20 minutes, it allows me to really focus into it. And then I move on to the next thing from there. I also, as I said, I'm open. Like, if I wake up and it's just like, man, I haven't learned a new tune in a while, like I'm going to learn some tunes today, like I'll do it, and if I wake up the next day and it's just like, man, I want to just fly and get my fingers together and, take my technique to the next level. That's what I do, So because of that, it's kind of more fun. I have so much variation in my practice routine. There's no right or wrong. you know, there are people who practice the same thing for a month. I practice the same thing for 20 minutes and then come back to it later. You know? So that's my approach.
That's cool. I've actually never heard that before, that 20-minute approach. I really like that too.
Yeah, for sure.
That is good because sometimes it can feel like it's a mountain of things to tackle and you just
It can.
20 minutes at a time.
Yeah, and I think that people get very easily overwhelmed. I mean, because I believe in the 10,000 hour rule. You know, I believe that it truly takes 10,000 hours to master something and beyond if you want to, you know, keep on developing. And so, you know, it's just math. It's so many hours. And when you're first starting this, when you're not even 1,000 hours in or wherever you're at, it's very easy to look at, you know, the idea of how far you want to get with your development and be like, why do I even start? You know? But it just happens 1 minute at a time. And you know, you just chip away at it day after day. I, you know, like making, you know, the comparison that if you work a day job 8 hours a day for, you know, a whole year, you're going to hit, I forget what the math is, but anybody good at math here? You know, you're going to hit a lot of hours in the year. At one point I did the math. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
40 hours a week.
Something like 4,000 hours, right? Like if you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, it's going to be like 4,000 hours or something like that. You know, like point is, I truly believe that you can master anything in 3 years if you treat it like a day job, and that's not that long, you know. So it's all just a matter of time, and you know, same goes for an hour a day. Like you'll hit it, you know, if you do an hour a day. But it takes time, and I think, you know, Emmet can probably attest to the fact that we both went through periods of our life, and I try to still continue going through periods of my life where I'm practicing several hours a day and, you know, just dedicating myself to this music because we're speaking a language and we've got to be as fluid and fluent as possible with it.
Speaking of that language, we've got a question from someone who's not new to the saxophone, but they're new to jazz, and they're asking about if you have any thoughts on, you know, they're good at classical saxophone and have played in jazz band, but they have no idea where to begin with improv. If you have thoughts on where to start for someone like that.
Yeah, totally. Well, improv is essentially just spontaneous melodies. And so you're learning melodies in classical music. So as, you know, a first step, try to take a melody that you've learned in classical music, or maybe even a melody that you like of popular music today, or better yet, learn a jazz standard and learn that melody. And then see if you can start embellishing that melody and start to just lightly improvise around it. You know, that's really probably the best place for your first steps. One more thing I'll say is, you know, learn a phrase by ear. You know, if you're a saxophonist, you know, find a Sonny Rollins recording or a Dexter Gordon recording that you like, and just take one phrase and see if you can learn that phrase by ear, and then learn another and keep going. That's definitely going to get you started for sure.
Totally. I love that. I have a question I'll jump in with because we were talking about Taylor Swift. I think it's so interesting that you played that kind of a show, and then I've seen you play much more straight ahead stuff. What's something that you learned working with her that maybe transferred back? And, you know, I'm sure it was a very different gig in many ways.
Yeah, totally. When I play ballads, I love to play ballads really quiet, and quietly, I should say. And I actually learned from Taylor how great it is to be understated. You know, I got to play with her live, and I got to hear in my ears, you know, that live vocal track, and she always sounded great. And yeah, one thing that I learned was that she was just so focused on her sound, and you know, she did not ever sacrifice, you know, quality, you know, just to you know, be blasting with her voice or anything like that. You know, it was always very, you know, restrained, and she got like a very sweet sound. And you know, you think of her massive success, there's a reason for that. It's very pleasant for people to listen to. And you know, I think that when we play a ballad in jazz, our opportunity to, show our sensitive side. And you can, of course, do that on any piece, but especially during a ballad, you're telling a love song, or it could be something that's a little different. It could be, playing about heartache, or, they're the lyrics in, songbook standards, are really, really wonderful. And a lot of times they will address something that is, much more nuanced about love or life and, the end of love and all sorts of deep things like that. So, so I would say, bringing it back to what I learned from Taylor, certainly, just focusing on your tone and having a sweet, soft tone can just be so effective.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
We've got you were talking about people who maybe saxophonists should transcribe, but we've got a question from Carolyn here. She says, vocalist here, I wanted to know what are your top recommendations for solos to transcribe to improve your improvisation? I know there's a million, but there's a lot of people who are new here and they don't even know where to begin or what's hip and what's not hip. And if you had any specific thoughts on things they should check out.
Yeah, I would start with Dexter Gordon, 3 o'clock in the morning off of the album Go. Awesome solo and very melodic, great tempo.
I can sing that one.
Yeah, totally. That's so great. And, Dexter, really anything Dexter, especially at a like medium down tempo, is a great place to start a transcription.
Yeah.
Cool. And we've got someone here, anonymous, they're anonymous attendee. They say, thank you for doing this. And they've been transcribing. So now we've got someone who has been transcribing and they've been trying to mimic the player. But when it comes to playing with the group or metronome, their time feel is pretty stiff or rushing. And if you had thoughts on to improve time feel.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so a few things. One, pay close attention to the triplet subdivisions. When you're learning a solo, so often, someone's eighth notes are really, falling into triplet subdivisions. And a lot of times, swing eighth notes don't really exist, in the way that we're taught, in middle school or junior high or whatever, as we're first learning, unless we have a jazz educator that really knows what he's doing, or she knows what they're doing, I should say. And, with swing eighth notes, it's typically taught that it's like this lopsided, like da, 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 And I remember taking a lesson with Ralph Alama in high school, tenor saxophonist in the Village Vanguard Orchestra. And, Ralph would say that sounded like a trotting horse, trot, 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 trot. And so, all to say that most of the legends played their eighth notes a lot straighter than people typically realize. And articulation, a lot of times, is what really gives it that good feel. So yeah, really dial into someone's articulation, and just a kind of like quick tip on the fly. Pay close attention to how much, especially saxophonists, will tend to articulate on the downbeat. There's this misconception that you're supposed to just articulate the upbeats, when in fact, the upbeats are typically articulated if you're going down. The downbeats are typically articulated if you're going up. Doodin, doodin, do is usually the type of sound that it makes, or that we say on for saxophone articulation. Doodle, 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 I guess is what they say for brass. That's something I put out a whole master class on, because it's a deep topic. But articulation is I would say really key when it comes to time feel.
Nice. Chad, like you and I have a bunch of similarities in that we have tried to do things online and considered more of more of the business aspect of being a jazz musician than maybe a lot of people that we grew up with. And I think that has something to do with trying to find community through the internet, which is a relatively new thing that jazz musicians haven't had the chance to use and learn. But everything from the text message lessons, which I had never heard of before. Whenever I see something that I've never heard of before, I'm like, that is cool. That some of your masterclass series. What else have you? Where did you start with all this? How did you start to become sort of a personality online that people could access, engage with, and learn from? And what are some of the little innovative things that that you've done, like writing books or text message lessons, things like that? Maybe you can take us down that journey a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's really a beautiful thing that we're able to, as you said, have this online community. And yeah, I guess it all started when, just years ago. I think it was around the time when, I was getting off the road with Taylor. I started posting some videos, of me playing on YouTube. It was really that simple, and I think Facebook. And it was just cool to see a positive reaction to it, and it was hard to keep up with because I was gigging and working and all that stuff, but I always just tried to come back to YouTube whenever I could, just to put a video out. And then eventually I did a series called Standard Sessions, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something like that.
What led you to start that? Just trying something?
Yeah, for sure. I really loved, when I first moved to New York, and I'm sure you did the same thing. Like when I first moved here, sometimes I would just go to somebody's house to jam or whatever, and you just play some tunes.
I remember those days.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And, probably similar to, I would imagine, the live at Emmet's place, type of theme for me. I was like, man, I miss just like getting together with some people and, getting in a room and playing. And so, yeah, the idea was really just to document that. When we were younger, we'd do that all the time, but I would find sometimes we would show up at the gig, and then at the gig we're reading this really complicated music and nobody's really comfortable. And it's like, man, the session that I played in Brian's living room was way more fun than this earlier, so I guess that was kind of the idea there. And then as far as innovative things, thanks for bringing up the text lessons thing. The idea with that was that, I used to teach on Skype back in the day, and eventually, I just started focusing on releasing video content that everybody could watch. And I release books, and if they wanted to go deeper into it, they can do that. That was fun, and once I got into that, I really only had time to do that tour, and so I stopped teaching at that point. But when the pandemic happened, and we were all at home, not playing gigs, I thought, well, I guess I could teach some lessons again. But what always bothered me about just the traditional like week-to-week lesson thing, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it just bothered me that it was like teacher shows up, student shows up, you do your lesson for an hour or whatever, and then that's it, and then you see them in a week or two or whatever, and the rest of that time you don't have that same dialogue, and it's the student might go a couple of weeks where they don't practice or forget to practice because they're just not in that same mindset. So I just thought it would be cool if I could actually communicate with people in a way where they could just hit me up whenever, and we just email and text, and I send them assignments through email, which is what I was doing for regular lessons anyway, and then we can just have that continuous dialogue, and yeah, it's pretty cool. And then now Andrew Gould is involved, and so we both are working with the members of the studio, and yeah, it's just nice to have that open channel. I really like doing it like that, and we can still send videos back and forth so we can still have that direct interaction, with actual playing. So
So
yeah,
they
it's,
all,
yeah, it's fun to do that. Mhm.
they all have your phone number?
So we do it through Google Chat. Yeah, right. So essentially, you can text from the app on your phone, and do email. On the business side of things, as long as we're getting into that, you'll always have this idea, and then it's just like, okay, how do we do it? So I know you've got your Emmet Cohen team, and it's awesome. We would not be able to do this stuff if we didn't have people that were putting their energy into it as well. So I'm really grateful in particular for Austin Kruchak, my manager, and whenever we have an idea, it's like the idea is fun, and the rest of it can be fun too. But the idea is fun, and then you have to figure out how to do it. So for us, when we came up with that, I was like, I want to be able to just text everybody. Yeah, that was kind of how we figured out how to do it. We were thinking about giving everybody my number, but I figured I should probably make sure I can sleep at night without the phone going off. So yeah, we've got the Google Chat app, which is pretty hip. It's like more like the search function works better and stuff. Don't get me started on iMessage. But,
yeah. That's awesome. You brought up having a manager. That's something that I don't have personally. I have some agents and I have some people who help me, and Bryan runs education. Bryan, who's here, he runs education and helps with social media and Emmet Cohen Exclusive, which is kind of my membership Patreon type of thing. But I was wondering when you met Austin, how you developed that relationship, and when you knew that he should be your manager, what kind of partnership it kind of entails, if it's more traditional thing, because I know he's probably young like your age, and I know he came to the house and did some video content when you came over here for the concert. So I'm just wondering, what kind of capacity you guys work in, because I know there's a lot of musicians who think that they need managers right away, who think that they need help. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, it's fun getting into the business side of things. As you said, yeah, a lot of people think they need managers right away. I think what's funny is, typically as you're developing a business, there's this idea that you can just hire somebody to do something, and then it's off your plate. And already you're laughing at it. I know it's just not that simple. It's like you got to direct the whole thing, and eventually, if you create effective systems, get things running on their own, you can certainly benefit from saving time. But in many ways, when you're creating a team, you're just working around the clock even more, because you've got even more projects that you're doing. So and then the other thing is, as you said, people, bringing it back to this again, people say they think they need a manager to make things happen in their career, and that's obviously not true. I mean, you're a prime case in point. It doesn't get better than that, as an example. And a manager today could mean many things. Some people have tour managers, some people have business managers, some people have regular managers. And I think at the end of the day, in the modern music business, a manager is just your right-hand man, so to speak. At the end of the day, I guess that's how I would sort of classify the working relationship with Austin, my manager. It's just anything that we want to do, we're working on it as a team.
Cool. Is Bryan back? You want to take some more questions, Bryan?
I'm back. Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that. We're sneaking in some lunch real quickly. I love this question from Carolyn. Now that things are opening up again, and we do have so many people who are new to all of this, do you have some etiquette advice or tips for first-time jam session attendees? Yeah, that's a tough thing. It can be so intimidating the first few times you go, and yeah.
Yeah, totally. Just some general etiquette things. I would say only get up on a tune that you know. listen to the other musicians and have a conversation with them. Typically, a jam session can turn into, just a bunch of people, trying to do their thing. But at the same time, know that in general, these jam session communities I find are very warm and welcoming, and I think that the important thing is to just be there to support as well as to bring your own thing to the table.
Amazing.
For me, it also helped going with people who I wanted to play with.
Right.
When we first moved to New York, maybe we'd go down to Smalls together with a group of people, and have something in mind that we wanted to play and sit in together, welcome other people into our thing as well. I think community is undervalued and understated when it comes to jam sessions. It's a great place to meet people. It's a great place to get phone numbers in your phone of other musicians who may want to call you for a gig down the line somewhere, to make friends with people who then, maybe you want to have a private jam session at somebody's house, which is often a space where you may feel more comfortable. And I think that's an important thing about jam sessions as well. Just to remember, it's not about playing one tune. It's about being around a community of people.
Totally. And I think that this goes hand in hand with jam sessions and just playing the music and improvising. But Darian's asking tips on getting out of your head when playing and allowing yourself to be more in the zone. So if you have thoughts on that, especially at jam sessions, I think a lot of people can get in their head.
Yeah, totally. And I'd be curious, Emmet's thoughts on this too. But yeah, one thing is knowing that the more you dedicate yourself to this craft, the more confident you become. Because again, bringing it back to that, we're learning a language, really, the language of improvised music and the language of improvised music and jazz. And so, I think that the more fluent you become and the more fluid you become with it, the more confident you'll be by nature. Know that, although some people say like play like it's the last time you're ever going to play, it likely won't be. There's always another night. There's always another day, and I just really try to focus on that. I'm always developing, and I'm never a finished product. I'm always obsessively, searching for what's out there in the music. Somebody, said recently, it's like, a good friend of mine said, they don't feel like, the music is in us. It's out there, and we're just trying to go find it as much as we can. So I like that way of thinking about it. And also I meditate. I meditate every day, honestly. I have a whole routine, even when I'm on the road. I will get off the flight and go to the gym first thing, and then meditate, and then warm up, and then go to the gig from there. And so I think those are really good things to do to help with your mental game, for sure.
Yeah, that strikes a chord with me. I'm into yoga. It's one of the things that would help center me before performance or after a long travel day, or and before an early morning or something like that. What is kind of your meditation practice? Is it guided? Is it how long is it? And how long have you been doing it? And how has it affected your artistry?
Yeah. I do it for 20 minutes a day. Sometimes I try to get in the second session. Sometimes I get 25 or 30 minutes in. And I do it self-guided on a hum. I love doing it on a hum. I think that there's something very spiritual about vibration. The theory is, the Big Bang was vibration that started the whole universe. And we as musicians are literally just vibrating things in order to make sound. And so I take that into my meditation. by doing meditation on it. And yeah, that I find that really centers me.
I love that. That's so cool. That's so interesting. And then as soon as you said meditation, I was like, oh yeah, Emmet, there's yoga. Maybe
Yeah.
there's something there that we can unpack, and like there is this other aspect that we all need to incorporate into our lives to become the full artist.
Yeah, I'm working on my posture all the time, nonstop. I do yoga as well. I work out a lot. I don't do yoga as much as I should, but I try to be fairly consistent with that. And you know, my posture is, you know, terrible in general, but it's gotten much better. And you know, there's a physical element, you know, I think to improvisation in that, you know, if your mind and body is on point, then your ideas are also going to be on point, fresh in the moment.
Here's a different kind of question. I like these different questions that I don't ever see. Negative harmony. This is something that we see on YouTube all the time. People talking about negative harmony. It's the hippest thing. Alejandro's asking, don't you use negative harmony like Collier? And do you have any thoughts on that beyond what we see on YouTube? And yeah.
Yeah, totally. So here's my spiel. We'll see. You know, Emmet, of course, feel free to add to this if you'd like. But I'll never forget when that video came out, because I wasn't aware of it. But all of a sudden, like every masterclass I did, somebody was raising their hand and saying, "Do you use negative harmony?" I was like, "What?" And I love Jacob Collier. I love what he does. I have so much admiration for his musicianship. And so I checked out the video and was kind of, huh? You know, and I haven't gone back to it since. So I kind of got the gist of it when I watched it. And, you know, I consider myself to be, you know, pretty, to have a pretty established level of theory, knowledge, and understanding, relatively speaking. I mean, you know, everything in music is just like, it's unlimited, you know, so I still feel like I'm barely touching the tip of the iceberg with everything at the end of the day in music. But that all being said, I think when that video came out and they learned that there was this concept, negative harmony, and that it can sound cool and create interesting harmonic ideas, I think that people immediately started to think that anything they heard that sounded harmonically interesting was negative harmony. They would just hear something now, or, you know, something different, and be like, "Oh, is that negative harmony?" And so, literally, sometimes, like in a masterclass, you know, we would be playing, and then, you know, me and the pianist would like connect on some sub, and people would be like, "Was that thing that you did like halfway through your solo, was that negative harmony?" It was like, no, like, and I don't even really know what it was. It was just kind of out, you know. And so, one quick little tip for inside and out, and of course, there's harmony is so deep, and you know, the full scope of harmony and everything that you can know with it, I'm still a student of, you know. But you know, remember that on, you know, in the most simplest form of inside and outside, if you take a C major chord, you know, a pianist or guitarist is going to build that chord typically with notes that are in the C major scale. Not always, but, you know, typically they're going to build a more spread out chord with the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 13 typically. And all of those notes, for that reason, are inside, because the chordal instrument is playing that harmony. And so that is going to be inside, especially if the bass player plays a C, plays a root, and, you know, in the bass. Any note that's not in that scale is going to sound outside. So if you want to play out, you know, the first thing to know is that you've got to be able to play in, because you got to know what you're going against, you know. And so much of what you can accomplish that can sound really cool harmonically is just knowing what's in and then choosing to go out. Now, of course, that is just, a quick tip on the fly. Of course, it's much deeper than that. And there's much that you can study and learn with harmony. And also lots of concepts you can get into, like pentatonics and triad pairs and melodic scales and stuff like that. But still, even when you're getting into those techniques, a pentatonic phrase is going to sound in if all the notes are inside. It's going to sound out if all the notes are outside. And there, are degrees of that, and that you can play something that's really out, or you can play something that's a little out, and develop it until it gets really out, and then bring it back inside. Yeah. So in some ways, I'll just say, in some ways, it's more simple than we really think. But the last thing I'll say is bringing it back to that negative harmony idea. I can still say with confidence that the vast majority of pianists, guitarists that I've gotten to play with that are brilliant with harmony, the vast majority of them, that I've chatted to about this negative harmony idea have responded with the same thing, which is like, yeah, I've never thought about that idea. Not to say that you shouldn't explore it, but just don't fool yourself into thinking that anything that you hear that's outside is negative harmony just because it sounds different.
Yeah. Do you have your saxophone near you? I'd be interested to hear. I'd be interested to hear like just the difference between like super out and a little bit out, like the kind of things that you're talking about.
Right.
It's supposed to be a Q&A and you don't have your mic set up, but if it's
Yeah.
there and you want to grab it and just,
For
be
sure.
like, this is a little out, this is super out.
Totally. Yeah. I don't have it set up and I don't have my mic, so it might be total madness. But yeah, check out Eric Dolphy, for an example of an improviser that oh my gosh, like just fascinating, like the wide intervals and stuff that you would do, for a reference for someone who's just a total master of outside playing. And Hank Mobley for an example of someone who was just so perfect at just being like right in there. Not to say that he never played out, but a lot of his substitutions were also just like so clear and calculated, like, oh, it's just a 2-5-1 up a half step, bang,
Wow, that was a lot. That was a lot of theory talk there. We're going to change gears for a second to change the pace. We got a question from Ken, and this is something that you alluded to. But what was it like when you first moved to New York City? Before you even started posting videos, before you had all the gigs that you have, did you have support or friends there to help you get out and get set up? And just what was your experience like when you first got to New York?
Yeah. I was a little concerned I'll just say when I did 2 years of school in California, which, looking back on this was really silly. But when I was 18 and I moved to California and so many of my friends were going to school in New York City, I guess I had what now is called FOMO, right? Like fear of missing out, feeling like I have all these, peers in New York who are starting to do the thing. And once I finally got there, I found pretty quickly that, some of those musicians that I was, feeling envious of for being in New York and being able to take advantage of the opportunities that you can seek out in New York. When I got here, a lot of those musicians were asking me if I could hook them up with things. And so I think what I learned from that is, you could move to New York when you're 65, and if you sound amazing, you'll get work. You'll be one of the top call players. There's the expression, take care of the music, and the music will take care of you. I think is how it goes, or something like that. But I think the idea, even if I'm not getting it exactly right, I think the idea is that put your time into your musicianship, and the rest of it's going to take care of itself. Where did this question start? It
was open-ended. Just what was it like for you when you first got to New York?
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean,
Maybe a day to day. What was a day in the life of
right.
Chad?
Totally. Yeah, day, when I first moved to New York, a day in the life was going to the bodega around the corner in Harlem, getting a deli sandwich, going to Shed, you know, going to some house session, at somebody's place, playing in somebody's living room, getting a dollar slice pizza, going to play a gig for tips somewhere, and then going down to the village and hanging at Fat Cat or something, and just yeah, that was kind of the New York thing when I first moved to New York, and I think one suggestion that I would give is if you want to be a musician that plays lots of gigs as a sideman, if you want to get out there and meet people and just start working, um, one really good thing to do is avoid getting stuck in a fixed network of players. Always try to be meeting new people and developing new friendships and musical relationships, so to speak, with people. That's what I would recommend. That's not to say though that the other way doesn't work. Just if you want to be a sideman that's getting called every day, that's going to be really helpful. However, if you want to develop something really special with your close network of musicians that you love to play with, what's awesome is now we live in a time where you can have access to the world through the internet. So if you're building up a really special project, you can get it out there, and if it resonates with people, it will catch on from there. So I just want to make it clear that there isn't a right or wrong way. But if you want this, maybe you go that way. If you want that, go that way.
Yeah. There's this, as we talk about, things that did develop for you with the internet and how the internet has enabled all of us to reach so many people. Obviously, that's a big part of what you do. And that was when I popped out. So some of this I might have missed. But now that you have this following on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, and is there a strategy that you try to adhere to, or you try and make sure to post a certain amount, or how do you fit that into your schedule even? And how do you maintain, some people are watching me for the educational stuff, and some people are watching me to hear me shred over Cherokee. And how do you kind of consider your strategy and how often you post?
Yeah, totally. It's been hard to keep up with ever since playing again. And I think the the thing that really helps me is something that I imagine Emmet would say helps him as well, is just having a team that can help you get this content out, for sure. Yeah. So, but I guess in terms of just passing on advice, if anyone wants to get into creating content as a musician, it's funny, still, like, the first educational videos that I put out on YouTube were literally like, I just had like a joke of a setup and like a little like white backdrop that I just like put behind me in my old apartment, and I just sat down and just talked about 10 exercises that I think are great warm-ups, and that that video a lot of people watched, and so it doesn't need to be like that you have 3 brilliant like Sony cameras and like high tech equipment and stuff like that. You can still put out content that resonates with me. I mean, Emma, when you started doing your live stream, wasn't it just like an iPhone or something like that, in the very early days before things developed?
Yeah, we put an iPhone right there,
Yeah.
filming the band, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all it takes is kind of something that people can feel like they're a community in. And I think people showed up to your page and um, and really felt like they, belonged someplace. Like other people were trying to access the same information, that other people were practicing this. How is it going for them? And I think that's a super important thing that you created. And I think you also bring a lot of people into the music. Um, and I was also curious about the whole social media thing, and I want to ask you about your books as well. How many books have you written? What are they on, and do they have like a sequential order?
Yeah.
And how did you conceptualize that or visualize that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've lost count at this point. I think it's around 30. And yeah, yeah, totally. And I used to write them. I used to write them on planes. I would, do this in particular. I would do this monthly, um, gig at SF Conservatory, San Francisco Conservatory, working out there. And that's a long flight coast to coast. So I would just like pump them out. It all started when I was teaching privately, though, on Skype, back before Zoom was around, or at least before people were using it like they are these days. And, for me, I would be, teaching someone a lesson, and they would ask, like, oh, how do you do this? And it was like, well, I mean, probably the best way that I could show you is actually just give you something. And so I would kind of break it down on paper, or really, in Sibelius, the music notation program. And so, that's kind of where it all started. I just try to be the resource that I wish I had when I was growing up. I had amazing resources, and also, worked out in books myself. I'm really grateful to have had that, and the teachers that I had growing up and all that. And there's just so much that I learned, and still continue to learn. I just want to pass that on, really. Just tons of different concepts with the books, everything from, etudes, pentatonics, over standards, to, technical exercises, and phrases using different concepts. I don't know. I just keep on going. I'm just trying to take what's up here and put it on paper, which I've been doing for a long time. It's just a matter of putting it out in a way that's best for people to be able to consume it. So it's not just like my chicken scratch notes on manuscript,
Yeah. These are all PDF books that people can download.
Yeah,
They
totally.
all have different concepts. How many pages long is a book like this?
Yeah, for sure. Some of them are like 30, some of them are like 300, and and I always tell people, like, there's no right or wrong way to do this, and everybody's got their own opinion on the best way to develop. But for me, I always tell people the best way to learn something is the fastest way that you can memorize it, because that's what totally internalizes it. That's what develops your ear the most. And so, I tell people, if you want to start on the page, go for it, and then just always make it your goal to memorize. The more you memorize, the better. And so that's what I did. I practiced out of like Bergonzi books and Weisskopf books. Even checked out like the Slaminsky book, that Coltrane was studying from. And I think it's important to acknowledge that legends like Charlie Parker, were really into Stravinsky, and Coltrane was checking out like the Slaminsky method, and Yusef Lateef has that awesome book out, because I think sometimes people will get maybe a little caught up in over romanticizing the idea that the jazz legends just picked up their horn and just kind of magically developed their language through playing with people. It's very important, and you cannot become a master of this music without that. But I think it kind of sells short how brilliant a lot of the jazz legends were as intellects. I've heard from people who have either met, played with Charlie Parker themselves when they were still around, or people who knew someone who played with Bird, and everybody says that he was the smartest person anybody knew. Like, he would have been president. He was born in a different era. He was reading like physics books and stuff like that. So I think it can kind of sell short how brilliant these guys were to just be like, oh, they all got together and hung out and magically like kind of learned this music. Like it sells short like the investment that they made into it. But yeah, that's all to say. In like my text lesson studio, we're learning transcriptions all the time, and I learned more solos than I can count. Dozens of solos. I learned at least 8 or 9 solos in all 12 keys, if not more. 2 Lester Young solos. Oh, Lady Be Good, Shoeshine Boy, Charlie Parker, Moose to Mooch, Yardbird Suite, Ornithology, Dexter Gordon, Cheesecake, 3 o'clock in the morning, Sonny Rollins, St. Thomas, Hank Mobley, This I Dig of You. Those all just off the top of my head are solos that I actually learned through the keys, or at least I did the first chorus through all 12 keys. And so, yeah, you have to dedicate yourself to music in every single way that you can think of. And I think that, the mistake that people make is sometimes they just decide that, the only way to do it is like this. And then they don't even bother doing that. They just get this idea like, I've just got to do this, but I don't feel like it. It's like, man, you got to do everything, like you gotta wake up and just like hit it. If you want to get better as a musician every day, you need to practice, and make it fun. You can spend an hour on your phone just like that, spend that hour on your instrument and see where that goes.
Yeah, I love that. What?
Hope I'm not getting too long-winded.
No, that was perfect. I feel like you're finally hitting your stride.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the books like a big portion of your business too? Something I have ideas, I have notes, I have things that I want to put down, and I haven't been organized enough to do that yet, and I'm still formulating, how I might organize that and everything like that. But I'm wondering how big of a part of your business that is as well. Like, how many copies of these books do you sell that you keep putting these out?
Mm-hmm.
And is it mostly the same people coming back to get the next one, or are they sometimes new?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's funny. Years ago, I remember I don't spend that much time online, believe it or not. Emmet, I'm sure you can relate in that, like, we spend a lot of time like putting out content or whatever, but then we've got to get back to our lives and our playing careers and stuff like that. But once years ago, I stumbled on a funny comment where somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you got a Tesla, like must be those books are selling well." And it was funny because I got that Tesla before I ever released the book, and so yeah, for years I've done a lot of things in music, and as things developed in my career, I was able to just really do what I wanted to do. But years ago, I would go, I would go on tour with someone, and then I would get back and I'd land at JFK, and then I would like, go straight out to hitch a ride to Long Island to play a bar mitzvah or whatever, and then play a wedding gig that night, and then teach a lesson the next day. Man, I think the cool thing about being a musician and a musician, if you get to a high level and you become in demand, is you can go nonstop, which is kind of cool. If you like what you're doing, you can work all day, every day. And so I kind of like what I'm doing, and so I just work all day, every day, and I enjoy it. And I think you also have to develop your dare I say mental health, and develop your perspective so so you can stay positive and enjoy what you're doing, because anything can get old. I mean, I remember playing a stadium with Taylor and being like, wow, like my heart isn't really pounding anymore. Like as we go out and get into the Staples Center or whatever, anything can get old. So it's all about just keeping a positive mindset and perspective and moving forward. I'm really like kind of going off the rails with these questions and taking them to other places. But all to say, yeah, for sure, the books are a part of my business. There are always so many elements of business that you can pursue. For me, the books have never really been about that. It's always just been about making the resources that I wish I had. And I'm still working on it, because there's just still so many ideas where it's like, oh yeah, I remember when I learned that at the Berkeley 5-week program, and this guy showed me all this awesome stuff, and I shed that for 6 months, I've got all these scraps and my little manuscript paper from when I was 19 or whatever, and pull that out and make a book out of it. So yeah, all to say, it's just, for me, it's not really about the numbers. It's just about, as you said, community and making something that can have an impactful, effect on someone's development. So we've got a lot of really cool feedback. It's certainly the stuff that I put out is certainly sold around the world. It's just pretty cool. We've had, we'll hear cool stories like, people who are like, oh, I just got into Manhattan School of Music, started practicing, these books when I was 16, and they really helped things click for me. Or adults who are just like, man, I always wanted to get back into gigging, and it's just I felt so rusty, and I worked on this for a few months, and all of a sudden everybody at the gigs was saying, man, what have you been practicing, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why we do it. It's just it's really fulfilling to get that feedback.
That's awesome. I have a question that I usually ask in interviews with masters, and what is one of the proudest memories that come to your mind in your career, like the moment where you're on stage and you're like, this is the reason I do this, or this is the pinnacle of my career so far, or anything that's really happened that you're extremely proud of and is meaningful, even in the way you're talking about, going further into that.
Yeah, for sure. I guess a few moments off the top of my head, where it was that moment where it really felt like, man, I mean, this is why I do this. That's awesome. Once I played a gig with Clarence Penn in Mexico. I think it was Torreon. And I love Mexico so much, and that tour in particular, we really got around. I know this with some folks that I know you've worked with, Emmet. And on that tour, we played one place where, after we played we came out. There was a little, almost festival gathering after the show with food trucks and stuff like that, drinks. And we came out, and some people were actually tearing up, and we found out that that city, there was an incident that led to a mass shooting, and it was so brutal, the drug conflicts that were happening there for a period of time, that much of the population was displaced, and then eventually came back as things became safer. And if I'm getting this right, we were the first concert at that concert series in 7 or 8 years, or this first concert at the theater or something like that. And just to see how moving it was for people to experience culture like that, and have the music that we were playing be a part of what brought them together, to me was deeply moving. And then just one more off the top of my head, I've gotten to play with Randy Brecker a fair amount. Live stream was really fun, for instance, and we've gotten to tour a little bit and record, and we played this festival in Italy, and it's really cool. There were like 1,000 people there, and it was just like every time I just looked over and was like, man, like I'm playing with Randy Brecker with Mike Quintet. Like, wow, that was just, man, that was surreal. Because obviously I've, for so long been such a huge fan of Randy and the Brecker brothers and all the work that they did. And so, yeah, those are a couple moments that stuck out for me.
Yeah, that was a really fun concert that we did here.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the house. I think people really connected with it, and I think you're one of the great torchbearers of Michael Brecker's concept and his sound, and his facility and the things that he represented, and to experience that with Randy as well, and to see how you guys kind of interacted, and he gave you some tough love in there, which is funny. That's what it's about. I mean, that's the most beautiful part, when you learn something from a master like that. And I thought the whole concert was just a very magical kind of, evocation almost of like what Michael represented, but then also you doing your own thing, and the trio has our thing. How did that feel for you? I imagine most people watching right now saw the concert.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was funny after the concert, Randy was like, I hope people didn't take that joke the wrong way. I was like, man, I don't care.
He's the nicest guy.
And yeah, that's when he started talking about what him and Michael used to do. He said they played this one festival. I can't remember where it was. Actually, he said there were a few concerts where they played 3 songs over 2 hours. It was just like Stretch City. It's fun. It's certainly fun getting to that territory, and yeah, just all the stories that I've heard from Randy. Every time he shares something, it's just like it's a total gem, and so great to be able to just spend time with him and hear about all of his experiences.
So we're moving into that. We're going to bring a few, maybe 2 or 3 people onto the stream, one at a time, and they will ask you what they have to ask. I don't know what's coming, but we'll start with Yuval, because Yuval is always reliable. So we'll start with Yuval. I'm coming to you. Just 1 second while the Zoom loads Yuval in here.
Hey guys, wow, I'm so grateful to be chosen again.
How you doing?
I'm good. I hope everybody here is all right. So my question is, I'm not in New York, and I'm not in Boston or someplace like that, and sometimes I get worried that my odds of becoming more known, more listened to are lower because I'm not playing with all these cats. How do I raise my chances of becoming more, I guess, bigger in the scene? I've thought about YouTube, but those are also very small odds. It's low chances for my video to get shown to anybody.
Yeah, totally. I don't know a ton about how social media works. To be honest, like I've always just sort of posted myself playing, or a few years ago started posting, educational content, for people to learn from, and for me to just sort of pass down what I've learned. But I'm always under the impression that essentially, if what you're doing resonates with people, it's going to get out to more and more people, because of that. And so, I guess I would come back to what I said earlier about, taking care of the music, first, and just knowing that if what you developed as a musicianship is really exceptional, and you're putting it out there, eventually it's going to catch on, but you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. At the end of the day, you have to believe in yourself. Because nobody is going to believe in you like you can. And that's going to carry you. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Chad. I just want to say, your face is perfect. Like you look like a Chad, man. A real legend. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great one. Great to meet you. Well,
Benny also talks about how handsome you are, Chad. So maybe that's a secret, secret ingredient to the operation. If you're gonna make YouTube content, you better be handsome.
It's just the years of developing, the face muscles for saxophone.
You were doing
you would be all set.
You were doing the long hair look for a little while, but with the views down, so you cut it off.
Yeah, exactly. Once we started getting back to real life, seeing people in person, I had to be a little more presentable.
All right, we got Darian coming in here now. Will be with us in 3 seconds. There we go.
What is up, Chad? I'm a huge fan. What's up, Emmet? Huge fan. So my question for you, Chad, is so I play saxophone too, and I wanted to know, like, what records have you checked out lately? What players have you checked out also right now that are just having a huge influence and impact on how you sound? And how do you go into each player's sound, and how do you break down how they do the things they do?
Yeah, great questions. I think for me, I always come back to Dexter Gordon, Charlie Parker, and Sonny Rollins. One thing that I've been trying to do more recently is just jam along with recordings. And that is partially because I hosted like this virtual saxophone workshop that Chris Potter did a masterclass for. And, at the end there was a, little Q&A type of section, like what we're doing here. And I had to ask Chris, because I had heard this legend, that he had learned the whole Omni book in all 12 keys. And I was like, is there any validity to that? And, there are some heroes of mine, Joshua Redmond, just to name one that, I got to go to a master class of, and he said, learn these solos in all 12 keys. And I was like, wow, I got to start doing that, I heard this legend about Chris Potter, so I was like, oh, it's probably true. Heard legends about Mark Turner as well, and what they did. And so with Chris, I just had to ask him. I was like, is there any, relevance to that? And he was just like, no, I actually haven't even, paraphrasing here, but if I'm getting this right, he pretty much said, like, he hadn't even spent that much time, with Charlie Parker transcriptions. He spent more time just playing along with recordings. And so I thought that was really hip. And of course, it's something that I've done in my life, but, it inspired me to start doing that more and incorporating that more into my practicing. So with that in mind, like one thing I've been doing recently is, I love Dexter Gordon, Armin in Paris. I love Sonny Rollins trio live at the Village Vanguard. And, so I just love how those albums feel. And so sometimes I'll just put those on and just jam. That's been what I've been doing recently. Just one thing, as far as, taking influence from other musicians. I'm, almost always just coming back to the legends.
That's great. That's great to hear. Like, I've been checking out Kenny Garrett lately myself and just falling in love with his sound. So, like, super quick, just like whenever you're approaching a new style of a player, is your first thought to just transcribe what they're doing, or is it to try and find like, oh, he plays with a lot of arpeggios or different techniques and then incorporate that?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think when I first transcribe a player, the main thing that I try to be aware of is how they're getting through the harmony, how they're articulating, how they're phrasing. You know, when are they playing? When are they resting? How they're pacing themselves. You know, from chorus to chorus, if they're taking multiple choruses. And you know, how they you know, I guess I would say manipulate their sound, how they, you know, take their sound, and how are they bending the notes, and just the general spirit of it, the expression, you know, of what they're playing. I guess those are the elements that I try to think about the most.
Yeah. So again, just great to hear from you, Chad. Great to hear from you too, Emmett. Yeah. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for the good
Aaron,
question.
thanks for coming on, man.
Just remember to listen. You know, really listen, and listen in different times and different ways. I think that, you know, spending a month with a record. I used to do this in my car when I was driving around in Miami. I would take one record and I would put it in the car, and that would be all I listened to anytime I drove anywhere. And after a month, I would know the record solid. And you know, something like that's also helpful, especially compared to the usual. You know, you mentioned it earlier, Chad. The usual YouTube, Spotify, everything's at our internet, everything's at our fingertips on our phone, and and to really filter that out and get back to just one thing and focus on one thing or one track, even beyond transcribing, but just living with that and breathing it. That's something that Dave Liebman preached at Manhattan School of Music. You know, can you sing? You know, can you just sing the solo and then like turn the volume down and still be in the groove? Turn it back up and still be right with it. Like, can you internalize it like that? Um, that's oftentimes just as valuable as playing the solo itself or writing down the notes. So it's all about different approaches each time to
Yeah.
see how best you learn, which is where you started, Chad.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to get one more person on here very quickly and then move to the lightning round to finish it up. But Miles, I'm going to bring you on here for a quick question for Chad. And I've got the lightning round questions all set up and ready to go. Here we go.
Hey guys, I'm Miles. I'm a guitar player from Pittsburgh. I kind of have a question about like a general problem that I think that I'm having and a lot of really young jazz musicians are having. And you guys kind of already touched on it, but like the information overload when you're like opening your YouTube app and it's like 18 melodic minor licks make you sound killing or whatever. And you know, like just what you feel like are your true teachers, and then going off of that, like it seems like transcribing is like probably the, you know, like king of teaching you all of these things. And how do you take like all of these things that you've learned and then make them your own? Like at what point do you like, you know, transition from like copying somebody else to like incorporating your own style and like what makes it, I don't know, correct or something like that?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. I remember wondering the same thing. A few thoughts on that. I'm very curious what Emma would say as well. One is that I think what will happen naturally if you are studying and immersing yourself in as many masters as possible, you know? And so for me, like something really clicked when I started learning Lester Young solos. It's like, wow, you know, it instantly started feeling like things were happening, you know, and my foundation was becoming more sturdy. When you take qualities from the musicians that you're learning from, you know, a piece of that, you know, sort of becomes a part of how you improvise. And once you've learned so much information from so many people, you're going to find that you just start developing into what sort of might be your own thing. And it's surreal to me that every once in a while I'll hear a saxophonist. People will tag me in like transcription posts or whatever, and every once in a while I hear a saxophonist. I'm like, wow, actually that feels kind of like, I think they're kind of like playing my stuff a little bit, but my stuff is just a whole bunch of other people's stuff, So, I think that, I've seen so many incredible musicians. I'm not going to say their names because I don't want them to feel misrepresented. But some of my favorite saxophonists today, like they're cats who used to sound exactly like Kenny Garrett, and now they sound nothing like Kenny Garrett. And so don't be afraid of investing yourself into learning someone's language. Don't worry about that, because actually I think the more you do that and the more people you do that with, the more you develop into your own thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there's way too much emphasis put on becoming your own sound, having your own sound, becoming your own artist, your own person. Like that seems to be like a very trendy thing to think. Like I need to sound like only myself and no one. I don't want anyone to tell who my influences are. But really, the best jazz musicians are the best imitators. If I say, Chad, can you play like Sonny Rollins, so play like Sonny Rollins. I wish you had your horn, because this is one of my favorite things, especially for saxophone players, because they're such great imitators. Can you play something like Charlie Parker? Can you play something like Brecker? Like, what are the differences between those? Chad spent years on each of these musicians. And so, it's not something you want to rush. When I first was getting into piano, I were jazz piano. I wanted to play like Oscar Peterson, Monty Alexander, and Benny Green, and had this Ray Brown sound coming out of Oscar Peterson. What did that sound like, and what did that feel like? I didn't touch a stride piano player back then. Like Fats Waller or Willie Lyon Smith or James P. Johnson or any of that, which I'm super into now, and you can really hear the influence. If you watch or listen over time. And so I think, really spend a set amount of time with a musician, really get into it. And it doesn't have to be on your instrument either. You play guitar, if you, like a certain style of Chet Baker or something, and you learn how to phrase like Chet Baker, you're going to be quite unique. Pasquale Grasso is a guitarist who doesn't sound like any other guitarists. And he's taken influence from all the bebop, musicians and Art Tatum and piano players on guitar, and found, a way to kind of incorporate, especially Barry Harris's concept, incorporate that into his hands. And I think that, that happens very slowly. So, don't be afraid of not being yourself, because if you're just yourself, you'll always be all right. Like Chad said, believe in yourself, and also don't be afraid to sound like other people, because that's the key. All of our favorites sounded like someone before them, and to trace their artistry. It's interesting to trace Wayne Shorter's artistry. You can hear him in the early recordings sound like Lester Young and Coleman Hawkins and Don Byas and people like that, and then you can over time study an artist like that. Watch them become themselves. It's a cool thing.
That was super helpful. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going a little bit over time. Are you possibly good for just 2 minutes, Chad? I don't know.
No worries.
Cool. We're just finishing up.
Don Bias on old folks. I just have to throw that one. That's
Don Bias on old folks. Yeah, we've been doing playlists also, so maybe we can get a playlist from you, because people always ask, what are your favorite tracks that get you going?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
This is the final phase of the Emmett's Place education experience, and this is the lightning round. We've compiled a bunch of questions from people on Facebook and YouTube and mostly on Zoom. And these questions, as hard as it may be, we try and get you to answer them in 1 to 3 words. It's usually an impossible task, but we'll try. And we try and lightning through them to finish this out.
Oh my gosh, right. Let's see what I can do.
I'll just read them down the list. Who's your idol?
Dexter Gordon.
Favorite album?
Dexter Gordon, go.
Most memorable gig location?
You're bad at this. There are a few. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
I would say
You can name a couple. Yeah.
Doha guitar. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but there used to be a Jazz Lincoln Center club band that I think you played as well, right? Oh, you never played that one? Oh wow, yeah, that was a trip. I'm sure you heard. Yep.
Cool. Does Chad still play chess?
Yeah. I played chess very seriously as a kid. Oh wait, now I'm doing this. I'm supposed to be doing this rapid fire. Ish. Yeah.
All right. Favorite non-saxophonist solo?
Non-saxophone solo. I'm gonna say a modern one. Brad Meldau on "I'll Be Seeing You," and I'll say a more traditional one as well. Wynton Kelly on "Freddie Freeload." Yeah.
Do you approve of mixing classic jazz with world music, or is that taboo for you?
I think you can do whatever you want. That's the awesome thing about music. You can explore whatever you like.
Cool.
Absolutely.
How about a venue you'd like to play at that you still haven't?
I haven't played the Vanguard yet. I'd love to play the Vanguard.
Right on.
Yeah.
Living musician you'd like to play with that you haven't?
Herbie. I haven't played with Herbie yet.
Yeah. Who are your favorite drummers to play with?
Favorite drummers. Okay, I'm gonna try to say as many as possible, so I don't leave anybody out. But that's.
Oh no. Yeah.
All right. Let's start with Brian Carter, Charles Gould, Corey Fonville, Alan Bender, Jimmy McBride, Jake Goldbass. Been a while, but he's great. Clarence Penn. I mean, for sure. Yeah, I guess those are a few off the top of my head.
Cool.
But I'm sure after this I'm gonna be like, oh man.
Lee Pearson.
Lee Pearson. Oh my God, Lee is a beast. Yeah. Lee's the drummer on the Bodie gig. Oh my God, he can do everything. Yeah.
What's your favorite note to play on the saxophone?
Low B flat.
Should we say low B flat? Yeah, low B flat. So,
Saxophonists love starting their Instagram posts on low B flat. I've
true.
noticed that. I've noticed.
Miles thinks in. Gotta close all the holes before you open them.
We got the last two here. Favorite trumpet player?
Legend. I mean, you kind of have to say Miles, right? But I'll also add Clifford Brown. And living. I can't just say one. Sean Jones, Terrell Stafford, Nicholas Payton. There are a few.
Yeah.
And Randy. I mean,
What about in the lower generation, like front lines? I know you play a lot with Adam O'Farrell, maybe.
Yeah, totally. I used to play in Adam O'Farrell's band for years. He's incredible. Marquise Hill. is awesome. That Munt competition year back in the day, Billy Buss as well was a finalist. He's amazing. I just bring that up because Marquise and Adam were both in that. As far as cats our age, Benny, I'm always learning from Benny, for sure. Benny Knack. The third, BB3.
All right, here's the last one. It's always a stumper, so I'm warning you. Favorite standard?
Favorite standard, Stella by Starlight.
All right. Straightforward answer right away. You see that, Benny? It's not so hard.
Yeah, trouble with that one.
Yeah, he was stalling on that one for a while. Didn't want to give an answer, but
yeah, Stella's just so fascinating harmonically.
right on. Well, this has been a great hour and a half or so. We thank you so much, Chad, for all of your wisdom and all of your answers. There was so much information in here. This is like a record. You could listen back to it 20 times for the next month and get a lot of information from it. Thank you to everyone on the stream, on the Zoom webinar. We appreciate you signing up for this free webinar and joining us every time we do this. Thank you to everyone on Facebook and YouTube Live for tuning in. If you were trying to figure out how to actually join us for next time, just go to emmetcohen.com/education and sign up. It's completely free. Thanks to our sponsor, Adam R. Rose, who made these educational sessions possible and is a great champion of this music and likes to bring on great people like Chad. We thank you so much, Chad.
Chad, thank you. Thanks for being here, Chad.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Emma, for having me on here. Thank you, Bryan, for hosting this thing. Awesome. And yeah, shout out to Adam. Thank you, Adam. Adam Rose.
See you.